Hey guys, so let's talk a little bit about life. Life has been called many names over the course of centuries of the human experience. But one of the things it has been called that I think is really striking is the infinite game. The infinite game. It refers to something that continues in perpetuity, that has no end at all. The infinite game. Um, I can't quite remember who coined it, but I heard it first in reference to a guy called Simon Sinek, whom some of you may have heard of, right? He actually wrote a book about it called The Infinite Game, although he was referring to business in effect. But I think it also applies to the larger concept of life itself. So, why do I say life is the infinite game? Well, first of all, it is infinite, right? It is without end, and you might not realize it, but what we call life in the experience of human beings on earth, it's really just a sliver. It's not all there is to it. What we call life is our experience of being on earth for a particular period, which is time, right? We are living in a time, which is why we say our lifetime. Once we cease to exist on the earth, we are no longer in time. That doesn't mean that life ends. Life is a continuum. There was life before we started here on earth, right? And when we've exited, life will still continue. Our time on earth, our lifetime is the opportunity or the cumulative set of opportunities that have been given to us within a particular period to achieve certain things, our visions, our callings, etc. But life itself is infinite. It doesn't come to an end, right? So it is the infinite game. Now, when you look at it that way, it sort of throws more light into what I want to talk about, which is really how we should approach it. It can be so confusing, wondering how to make the best deal out of your life or to get the best deal for your life, right? So many people are confused about what they need to do in their lives. They're wondering how to make it, they're wondering how to make ends meet, they're wondering how to make more money, they're wondering how to succeed in this thing called life. Um, and it's something that I think that is applicable to every human being. At some point or the other, you've wondered, what what sort of life is this, or how can I make the best opportunity from the circumstances that have been given, right? You want to be able to understand how to rise to the top in life, right? You want to stand out, you want to be significant, you want to be valuable, you want to be impactful, you want to understand how to be in control in life, right? And because life can be so unpredictable, it can throw anything at you at any time. We've been through stuff, we've been through COVID, we've been through all manner of things in our human experience. Most of them came from left field. We weren't expecting it at all. So life has this tendency to throw things at you, right? And you're just wondering, how am I supposed to be able to cope with this thing that just does things arbitrarily, or so it appears. So the thing about it is, perhaps you're not meant to understand life in its entirety, right? Life is mysterious. Life is this thing that you can't possibly understand or have a 360. You might understand one bit of it and then something else comes up and you're wondering, what in the world? You know, there's so many things that are incomprehensible. But that doesn't mean that for you can't achieve control, or you can't manage your existence, or you can't achieve things, or you can't become a success. You can. Life is not mysterious to the extent that you won't know what to do. You will only be confused when you don't understand how to approach life. So how do you increase your understanding of life? How do you increase your ability to be at the top of your game in life, to make sure that you're making the most out of your life within the period that you have? Well, the first thing about understanding anything, particularly when it's as incomprehensible as what we call life, is by asking questions, right? And of course, if you cast your mind back through your education when you were in school, it was usually when you asked questions, right, and tried as much as possible to understand the answers that you really began to have a clue, right, towards understanding the subject, no matter how difficult the subject appeared. It's only when you shut down, when you refuse to ask questions, or when you just give up on the subject entirely, that the whole thing just appeared to be one incomprehensible mess, right? But when you ask questions, it begins to shed light, right, in your mind, and you begin to like, oh, okay, right, okay, this is what I need to do. Okay, if I did this thing differently, if I approached it in another way, if I did one, two, three, four, five things, perhaps things might get better, right? So in approaching life and in trying to understand life, you need to be able to ask some pertinent questions as pertain to you in relation to life in general. And what are these questions? For me, there's six of them. And also for me, and when I say for me, I'm just saying from my perspective, the questions of life are usually one words or one word questions, right? So I'm not suggesting that you go about saying, how do I achieve the best in life and make sure that I make $1 million? And no, 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 calm down, right? I'm saying that the most important questions that you'll have to ask and answer in life are usually one word and one word questions, right? And these questions I'm about to share with you, from my perspective, contain the full 360 of the human experience. Every confusion about life from our point of view stems from the fact that we haven't asked these questions or answered them correctly. And what are these questions? There's six of them, right? And they have to do with various aspects that control our existence here on Earth. And here they are very quickly. The first is, get ready. Get ready. If you want to write, go ahead and write. Get a pen and a paper and write, right? The first is who. And it's, to broaden it a bit, it's who am I? That's a question that has been asked over millennia, over the ages. Who am I? It has to do with your identity. And a lot of problems that human beings have stems from a lack of identity. A lot of people don't know truly who they are. That is why we follow trends. That is why we want to be other people. That is why we jump on a slogan and just follow it without necessarily understanding what it really means. There's a lack of identity, self-identity, that is prevalent in the human experience. Who am I allows you to beat that. When you understand your identity, you understand who you are. Um, the vista of opportunities that open is so much wider. Who am I? So who, that's the first one. The second is where, and that has to do with source, because it is in reference to your source or your heritage. Where am I from? Right? And I don't want you to mix this up with your traditional earthly heritage. I'm from Jamaica, or I'm from Paris, or I'm from Amsterdam, or I'm not talking about your earthly heritage, right? Or your earthly source. I'm referring to the source of your spirit, right? Which is who you truly are, actually. Who am I? That question needs to be answered. The third question is why? And for me, the most important question: why am I here? What am I doing here? Why was I put on this earth? I used to ask this question of myself a lot when I was younger. I'll look in the mirror and look at my face and be like, why am I here? You know, Why am I wired this way? Why do I think in the way that I think? Why do I like certain things and dislike other things? Why am I wired to do some certain things and not wired to do some other things? Why? That speaks to purpose. And once you answer the question of purpose, a lot of things begin to make sense. Why? The fourth question is what? And that has to do with your ability or your potential. What can I do? What am I capable of? And the question of potential is another loaded question because most of us tend to live beneath our potential. There are so many things that we could do that we are not doing because we don't think that we can do them. Right? I myself, I'm a great example of that. A lot of the things that I'm doing now, like speaking, coaching, training, consulting, and all of that, I didn't think I could do them. I just thought I could only do some certain things. But it was only when I began to really drill down into my potential that I began to uncover the things that I could do. And some of the things I could do really surprised me. But they were there all along. They just they just needed me to discover them. Right. So what can you do? That's the fourth question. The fifth question is where. It's another where, right? Um, and it refers to destiny. Where am I going? Where am I going? All of the things that I've thought about. Um, what does it pertain to? There must be a destination for my life. I can't just be here doing stuff without knowing that there's an end goal. What's the end game? What is it all about? Where is it leading me to? What's the destination? What is my destiny? Where am I going? And then the sixth question is is possibly the most practical of all of them because the other five tend to be rather philosophical, but this one is really practical, and it is how. Notice that the other ones began with W, but this begins with H, right? To differentiate from the other ones. How? How am I going to do what I say I want to do? How am I going to discover my potential? How am I going to discover my purpose? How am I going to discover my destiny? How am I going to discover my identity? How am I going to discover where I'm from? And that speaks to strategy. Whenever you ask the question how, you are talking about a strategy. How do I do this thing? You may have a vision, you may have a purpose, you may have the thing that you want to do in your head, you might have a mission. But if you don't know the how, if you don't know how to execute, if you don't know how to implement, if you don't know how to actually go along practically with the things that need to be done, you may end up missing the other things, right? So once again, who am I? Identity. Where am I from? Heritage or source. Why am I here? Purpose. What can I do? Potential. Where am I going? Destiny. And how do I get there? Strategy. Peace.